Hello everyone, Stellar here. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different here. We're going to be doing a Holo Sight, specifically like an Eotech XPS 23 sight. So I've already got a reference pulled up here, and we're going to go ahead and get straight into it. We're going to go ahead and give this default cube a new home and get started on the model. So we're going to be using Boxcutter and Hard Ops today because best tools to possibly use, and it's something simple to add to future weapons designs or stuff you've made in the past. So we're going to go ahead and get on with it and start with a cylinder here. Now this sight here that we're modeling, the Eotech sight, I've had experience with them before, and I really like using Eotech sights on my firearms. So I can't recommend them any more than I already am, but I highly recommend using those if people have the available funds for it, because these sights are rather expensive, but it's well worth it. They retain zero. They're like tanks, it's hard to break them. So what we're doing here is we're just building the outside curved shell for the battery housing right here. In this particular model, I believe, takes a CR123A battery, which is a common military / law enforcement style battery to be used. So we're going to go ahead and bring that here, and it kind of curves up, going up on the inside. So this outside shell here is just like a metal protecting frame. On the inside it's made out of plastic and other parts, but it does curve up from the body here. So we're going to try to replicate that now. I'm going to go ahead and extrude that out, bring it to about where we need it on this side. Safe bet's about right here. And we're going to extrude that upwards to about right there. And we're going to take our edge there and move it. Same with this edge, it needs to be moved a little bit more over. And we can go ahead and get this beveled on. So we got a nice little bevel going here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to apply our scale, and we're going to bevel these edges here to try to match the profile of our cylinder we have here. So now that that's pretty well matched up, we're going to go ahead and just stretch it out on the X a little bit. So it needs to be a little bit wider than what it was. Probably go with about right there. So what we're going to do with this, we're going to C-sharpen it, bevel it, and we're going to union these two together with the hops union function. So that looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and C-sharpen this again by holding Control when I click on Sharp after opening up the menu. And we're going to take and make sure we're looking pretty good, which in this case we are. Instead of that line supporting it, I'm going to give it this line to support it, and we'll remove that, and that looks pretty good there. We're going to take this edge here and this edge here. I promise I selected it, and we're going to bevel this. Go ahead and hit mark just to get rid of that, and we'll go ahead and grab this edge loop as well and just make it a little bit smaller. On everything but the x-axis, so we don't have any overlapping bevels, because that's always not fun to deal with. So we got this basic shape going. Now we need to kind of inset that, which is pretty easy to deal with. We're going to give it a modifier mirror, inset the face, and extrude it inwards. And we'll revisit that for the battery cap here in just a moment. Now the next step is to add a cutout after we bevel this top edge here. So we're going to go ahead and bevel that, make it look neat, nice and decent. Doesn't have to be anything crazy, we're just kind of eyeballing it right now. And that looks pretty good to me. So now, next step, we're going to go ahead and get a cube, bring it like this, extrude it out, scale it up just to where there's a nice little gap on the top there, and we're going to extend it on the x-axis a little bit. Take all of our edges, apply the scale, and we're just going to bevel it to try to match the profile of the outside bevel. We're going to go ahead and difference, and that's looking pretty good. Instead of doing that, what we can do is just bring this down a little bit here, difference, and that looks pretty good. So we got a little bit of cleanup to do, which is no problem whatsoever. Just need to connect some lines here together, and we'll go ahead and move the outside bevel lines to the correct locations. And we're going to go ahead and connect that there. Connect these here. And that's looking pretty good. It's about what we want it to look like. Now, on the back side here, what we can do is we're going to try to get it to match the profile of this, because on the real ones they do match that profile. So first off, what we're going to do is make sure our object is selected. We'll go into our orthographic view here. Make sure I have Boxcutter selected. And we're going to go from view and do circle. We're just going to draw this circle in, punch it through, and we're going to move it in and manually adjust what this looks like. And we're going to rotate that just a little bit, just to get it to kind of match that that edge right there. So now that that's matching, we'll go ahead and hide that. We're going to choose our N-Gon tool. Make sure our object is selected again. Get our N-Gon tool. Chop off that edge. Chop off this edge here. And we're looking good. We do have a few little issues here, but that's easy to fix, not a problem. Go ahead and join this line here. So it looks like we got a little bit of a situation here. We'll go ahead and turn our bevel off and see what we got going on, and it's just what I expected it to be. We'll go ahead and join that line there. Join this line here. And that's looking pretty good. What we can do here is I'm going to add a edge loop right there and just press J to join those together. And we will connect these. Move that up just a little bit. And we're looking good so far. Make sure we're all nice and good looking over here. We don't want any issues. Connect that, and we're looking pretty good. So we'll go ahead and turn our bevel back on, and we'll see that it is looking good except for a little spot right here, and that's just where our bevel was being a little bit funky, but I double tap G to move that up a little bit, and we're looking pretty good. So now that we've got this part added on, what we can do is add a edge loop right here, bevel that edge loop to where it gives us one more, and we're going to take these and pull them down. This is going to be the area that we're going to cut out for the sight to sit on the rail system. So now that we've got that taken care of, we can add our outside shell. So what I like to do is just get a cube, get it about to the size we need it to be, down to there. We're just going to do pretty much the same thing we did with the other one. We're going to apply the scale, take our two edges here, bevel it over just so it matches our profile on the inside. It doesn't have to be perfect. It is a shell. We're going to go ahead and redo that bevel. I don't quite like how that looked. So that's much better. We're going to go with that one instead. So we've got our bevel for that. I'm going to go ahead and C-sharpen it and bevel. I always get in the habit of C-sharpening even though it doesn't need it. You can just get away with sharpening it, but I get in the habit with C-sharpen because, like I've said in previous videos, I do stuff in a non-destructive / destructive type workflow where I get it the way I want it to be with the booleans, and then I make it permanent. So now that we have our shell selected, what we're going to do is we are going to bring our face down just a little bit. We're going to grab this face and that face, and we're going to inset it just so it matches the profile here. And so that wasn't a good inset, and we'll go ahead and do that again. Go ahead and inset the faces just so we have a nice little shell. I'm going to scale it in just a little bit, and that's looking good. Now with the Loop Tools add-on, I'm going to go ahead and press Bridge, and that made that nice and hollow, which is exactly what we want. Now what we're going to do, go ahead and select Box, drag it, and just chop off the bottom part, making life simple here. Now we're going to C-sharp it, go in, if I can press the right buttons here. We're going to do pretty much the same thing with circle. Draw a circle, send it through, scale it on the Z, and rotate it. Scale it on the Z a bit more, just so we're matching up nicely. In this case we are. We'll go ahead and hide that. Make sure this is selected again. Get our end-gon here. Chop that off, which that wanted to be a bit goofy, so we're going to do that again. Chop this off. We're going to hold shift to keep it live just so we can kind of see what's going on here. And I'm not entirely sure what is going on here. I see. So we're going to extend that out. This isn't working for whatever reason. It's because I'm chopping the wrong one. So we're going to go ahead and redo that. Make sure our outside protector is selected. Go back into X-ray mode, and we're just going to attempt to do that again and pretend the last thing did not happen. So that's good. Make sure our shell is selected again. Go ahead and draw an end-gon just to try to get us to match as much as we can here. Chop that off, and we're going to do the same for this here. Now this does start to get a slight curve, and that's perfectly fine. We're just going to follow that all the way down and out. Send that through there. Now, a cool thing we can do this multiple different ways. We can C-sharpen it and go in and adjust those bevels manually, or the neat function that we can do is we can go in here and get our last cutter, unhide it, and we can go into edit mode with our cutter. Go ahead and grab those lines and bevel them inside the cutter itself. Same with these here. Go ahead and bevel those, hide it, and now we're looking really good. This is starting to look like a regular sight, which is exactly what we want. So now I'm just going through looking at the topology here. I do want to take a little bit of creative liberty and bevel these edges here. I don't like how sharp those are, so we'll go ahead and add those, mark those edges, sharpen it again, and we're looking really good. We got kind of a sight system going on here. So now the next step would be is to get these holes cut out for our elevation and windage adjustment. These screws, you would screw these and it would move the reticle inside the dot to adjust for your elevation, for your windage, just to zero in your weapon to make it shoot more accurately. So that's what we're going to do here now. Pretty simple. Go into X-ray, make sure the outside shell is selected. Going to select circle, draw it to about the size it needs to be. Going to keep it live and move it into its final position here. Since it's still live, what we're going to go ahead and do is apply the weld modifier, add an array, offset the array to about right there. Now we're going to rotate it and offset it just a little bit more. Perfect. And now if you'll notice on our picture here, it's kind of got a backwards bevel, which is fine, easy to fix, or easy to do rather. So what we're going to do, we're going to go into move this just a little bit back to where it's supposed to be. Go into edit mode, select all, and just scale it down and adjust our array modifier. So now that that's adjusted, what we can do, I know there's a million other ways to do this. We're going to bring a edge loop to about right here. We're going to grab the outside edge loop and just scale it up a little bit. And before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and apply the array modifier, and we're going to do individual origins and just scale it up. And you can see what we're looking like here. So that looks pretty good to me. What we can do is go ahead and scale those up just a little bit more. Perfect. And we'll go ahead and hide that. And we don't want this mirrored on the other side, because on the other side, that side is blank. There's really nothing there except for like a screw to go into mount onto the weapon. So we don't have to worry about that right now. What we're going to do is bring our last cutter back. I'm going to snap cursor to selected. I'll hide that. Add in a cylinder. And what we're going to do with this is we're going to go ahead and apply our mirror here. And I'm going to bring this face, select the rest of it, delete it, select that edge, fill it in, and we're going to dissolve that edge because it's only a cap on one side. Alright, going back to this, rotate on the Y, bring it over, just so we can kind of see what we're doing here. And the reference is off from my model just a little bit, but we're using this more as a somewhat of a guide instead of an exact representation of the model itself. So we'll go ahead and do that. Add an array modifier. Rotate it just about where we need it to be. And we're going to difference that. And that's where our screws are going to go into in just a moment. Very cool. We're looking good so far. So now we're going to pay a little bit of attention on this side. There is a a little plate that goes here. You're going to have your brightness adjustment and your power button on that as well. So we'll go ahead and start getting to modeling that plate. So what I'm going to do is add a cube, scale it on the Y, bring it out just like so, bring it down right to the bottom, scale it on the X, and we'll go ahead and take this front face here. It's a little bit too thick, bring it in there, and we're going to extrude this all the way up till about right here, and we're going to push it forward to where it kind of matches the rest of the profile. It does have like a slight curve here. So now that we've got that curve there, what we're going to do, add a loop cut in the middle. We're going to bevel that loop. I'm going to take these two loops here, bevel it again, and just take this face and push it down and over. That was too far down. We're going to push it down again and out. And instead of doing that, we're going to go ahead and go with good old-fashioned box cutter or hard ops. So I want this to be mirrored because it is mirrored, so we're going to set our origin to our cursor since it's in the center, which it is not. So what we're going to do is get our cursor, put it to world origin. Now we're going to snap our origin to cursor and just mirror that. Go in here with a box, draw it in. It's an ever so slight little cut, and that looks pretty good to me. So now we're going to sharpen this, bevel it, and we're going to take our top edges here and bevel those over. Mark it, and we're looking pretty good. So now that we've got that set up, the next step is what we can do is add our power button. And the cool thing about these sights, which is going to be fun to do here, is they have little raised protectors for the button, if you will. Like, I don't know the exact name of what they would be called, but they're little protection type thing, like little raised edges where the button holes would be. So we're going to leave that there. Going to add a cube, bring that on the Y, just kind of get this to where we need it to be. These are kind of rectangular, and they will be about right here. Gives us some room for our screws and our cutouts on the bottom. So we're going to do that. Move that there. Make sure we have enough room and it's going through on both sides of our little plate here. What I'm going to do is take these edges after I apply the scale, bevel them just enough. We're going to take these two and join them together, hold shift and click onto our plate, and we are going to do the knife. Very cool. That works for me. Go ahead and hide these. And we're going to look and see what we have here. So that looks good to me. We're going to hold shift and press H to where it hides everything but this. Going to take our face here and here, inset it, and we're going to use the Loop Tools bridge function. Same with these faces here. We're going to inset it and use the Loop Tools bridge function. So that gave us horrible geometry. We don't like that. We'll go ahead and apply our mirror. and do that one more time. Sometimes mirror modifier will mess with some functions, and that's a lot better than our previous attempt. So now what we're going to do is make sure our geometry is nice and happy looking here. We don't need any craziness going on, so what I'm going to do is just merge those two together. Do the same here. And we will do the same up here as well. Looking good. We're going to go ahead and connect these two together by pressing J and get rid of these, which in turn allows me to get rid of this line, just to kind of clean up the topology a little bit. We don't want it looking disgusting. So that looks pretty nice. Now what we can do is take this by holding Alt. We'll click on this edge right here. Do the same for this, and the same for this. It didn't want to select all of that, and that's fine. So we will go in there and select it manually. Now what we're going to do is just extrude it outwards a little bit. Make sure it's still set on individual origins, because we want our circle here to be on the angle and not follow these angles here. So now that those are added, we'll go ahead and sharpen it and make sure our bevel's still looking good, which in this case our bevel is looking pretty good. So we'll go ahead and press Alt H, unhide everything, go over here and hide the cutters again because we don't need those. Now we're looking pretty good. So what we can do now is we will add a cylinder again, rotate it on the X, bring it straight down on the Z, make it about the right size, want it just ever so slightly smaller than the circle we just cut out, and we're going to bring it on through. With this one, we will rotate it to match our little angle we have here, just to put it in, make it look pretty nice. That looks pretty good to me, so we're going to move this back just a little bit, take our face and bevel it over. Slap it with a shade smooth, and we're cooking. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and mirror modifier it again. I'm going to take this edge loop, duplicate it, make it its own selection, press A, extrude it along the Y. We're going to take this face, fill it, take that face and fill it, and we're going to select all and shift in to recalculate the normals. We'll go ahead and shade smooth, and we're looking pretty good. So we'll go ahead and put those back where they belong. And we're going to take this face here and just bevel it over as well. Make sure to get off the sharp marks. So now we have our buttons in the back, and we're looking pretty good so far. Go ahead and handle our issues here, which that little line is the problem child. Go ahead and merge that, and it's doing the same thing on the other side, so we'll go ahead and fix it on the other side since we no longer have our mirror enabled. So now we're looking pretty good. We do have this little artifact here, but we can fix that relatively easily here in just a moment. So we're looking good. Now what we need to do is we're going to go ahead and put this screw in here, and it's going to go directly through onto the other side as well, and then on the other side there's going to be a bigger hand twist screw / knob to where you can use your fingers or a pair of pliers to crank it down on that rail system. So we're going to make sure our outside shell is selected. Go into X-ray mode, select circle, pick about the middle if we can, hold shift, send it through, and we're just going to move it down just a little bit. And we're looking pretty good so far. Inside there is where a screw will be going. So now we need to get our profile for the rail, and that will be pretty easy to do. So we'll go ahead and add a cube, bring it over. You want it just about there. You can be very precise with the measurements to make sure it fits onto a regular Picatinny rail system that most firearms either have or can have aftermarket accessories for. But I'm just going to eyeball it here because I kind of know about the right size. And the cool thing is we can always adjust the size of it later if we leave this active, or we can just go in and manually grab it and scale it if we need to. So now what we're going to do, we're going to add a loop here, add a loop right underneath that, and add a loop right underneath that. We're going to take this top face here, scale it in on the x-axis, bring it down. I'm going to take this edge loop here, scale it in on the x-axis. Actually, we'll take the bottom one as well. Just so we have our little Picatinny rail type look going on here. So now that we have that taken care of, we will go ahead and extend it out on the Y. And we'll go ahead and move it up into the weapon about like that. You want to have a little bit of meat grabbing onto the rail. So once that is in there, we'll go ahead and move it over. Make sure it goes all the way through. We're going to duplicate this. So Shift D, go ahead and hit, just click. We'll go ahead and difference that. And we'll go ahead and difference the bottom piece. So that's looking pretty good. Go ahead and scale that just a little bit more. Hide it. And we're looking really good here. So now what we can do is we can go ahead and C-sharpen it and see why our bevel is giving us a hard time here. And also clean up some of this junk down here. So what we can do is go ahead and hide our bevel modifier so we can work with it a little bit better. I'm going to draw a knife cut to that there. Go ahead and move that up. Give us some more room to work with. And we'll do the same on the other side here. Give us some more room, and we will merge those two together. Make sure it's not doing the same thing on this side here, which it happens to be doing that. So we'll go ahead and merge those together as well. And we will check back on this side. I'm just pressing period to jump over here so I don't have to move my mouse all over the place all day long. We're looking pretty good. No bevel overlap. We'll go ahead and take this bottom edge here on both sides and just push it down just to give that bevel a little bit more room to work with. And it looks like we got a little issue over here. This is looking good. I always like to check my knife just to make sure it actually went into the mesh properly, which in this case it looks like it has. So what we can do now is go ahead and turn our bevel back on. Bevel's still not too terribly happy, but we can deal with it. doing that literally does nothing. But we're looking pretty good. What we can do is also just get rid of our bevel just a little bit, just take back a little bit what we gave it, because we're giving it too much and it's getting a little bit excited on us now, and we can't be having all that. Now with this here, what we're going to do is just bevel over these edges here, mark them, and C-sharpen that. So now we're looking pretty good. We're going to make sure our mirror is still active, which it happens to be. I'll move it up there above the bevel. We're going to go with object this time, and we're going to draw a screw hole here and a screw hole right here. Just kind of eyeballing the shape. You don't have to be extremely precise. So I'll go ahead and sharpen that. And we're going to go through and figure out why this is wanting to give us a little bit of issues. So we're just going to jump off a line there, jump a line there, and that fixed our issue. So we're looking pretty good so far. Now what we can do is add our battery cap, and we'll go ahead and do that. I also want to go ahead and add this little hole for our retention wire here. I'll go ahead and send that through. It doesn't need to be through on both sides. I forgot to keep it live or just draw it normally, so I'm going to go ahead and pick that cutter back up and move it over. It got a little bit ahead of itself and too excited. So now what we're going to do is grab this face, snap cursor to selected. Alright, now we're going to do our little battery cap here. So what I'm going to do is add a cylinder, change the verts up to 66, scale it down, rotate it on the Y, scale it in on the X, bring it over here. Looking pretty good so far. Next step would be to bevel this edge after I apply the scale. It's got just a nice little chamfer going, nothing crazy. Very good. So now what we're going to do is select every other line. And this will take a minute, so I'll go ahead and speed it up. Alright, cool. Now that we've got those lines selected, we'll go ahead and scale it on everything but the X, holding Shift and hitting X. Scale that inwards. And that's looking pretty good to me. So we'll go ahead and look at it from this point of view here and scale it on everything but the X, so Shift X again, just so it's right there. And we're looking pretty good, so I'll go ahead and sharpen that and put a nice little bevel on it. So now we're cooking. I'll go ahead and scale this in just a little bit more here. Now we need to add our cut across, so that's going to be really simple. Go ahead and do cube. Bring it in, scale it up, scale it out. Probably in on the Y just a little bit more. Bring it over to about right here. And we're going to just take a look at it. I'm going to move this over just a bit. And difference it. So I'll go ahead and scale that out just a little bit more. Bring it over some. Go ahead and press H. Scale that out just a little bit more, get past our bevel. And it's a pretty deep line as well, so we're going to go ahead and push it in on the X a little bit more. And we're looking pretty good. We'll go ahead and sharpen that. So that's looking pretty good so far. Now what we need to do is add our little retainer cable. So we'll go ahead and do that. One thing I did notice about this here is we need to move this outwards just a little bit. Take this face back here, push it this way. We'll go ahead and snap the cursor to selected, add a cylinder to it, and before we do anything we'll go ahead and turn this back down to 32. Rotate it on the Y 90 degrees. Scale it on everything but the X-axis. And we'll go ahead and union that into there and go ahead and sharpen that. So now what we'll do is push this back in to about right here. That's looking pretty good. And we'll get our little cable going. So there's a couple of easy ways we can do this, and we're going to do that. So first thing we'll do is add a circle. Go ahead and rotate it on the Y. Scale it in to where it's about like this. And we're going to take this edge and rip it. We'll go ahead and bring that edge up there. Same with this one. Just so we can kind of get a little bit of progress here, make it look pretty decent. So I'm going to take this vert here, extrude it out, extrude it out, extrude it out, and go back in. Looking pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and add in another circle in edit mode. Go ahead and scale that down. We'll go ahead and get rid of these two vertices here. Select these. And we're going to go ahead and scale that up just a little bit. Rotate it. And we're going to get rid of these two vertices here. Or vertex, rather. Extrude it to where we're match, and I'll go ahead and merge those at last. Extrude it, and that's looking pretty good like that. So now what we can do is we can go ahead and just dissolve those. Dissolve those because we don't need as much here. I'll go ahead and dissolve every other one. Because we don't need all that. We'll go ahead and take all of that and scale it in on the X. So now we're looking pretty good. We'll go ahead and push this over. Take that bit there to about right here, and that's looking pretty good. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and apply the scale and convert this into curve. Go down to geometry and increase the bevel, just holding shift here. Go ahead and move that over just like that. Same with that one. And we don't need it as thick as it is, so we'll go ahead and turn down that bevel just a little bit. We're looking pretty good so far. Go ahead and take that just to match it up a little bit. And we're looking pretty good. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and convert to mesh. Now that that's converted to a mesh, we can go ahead and take these horrible looking edges here we'll just go ahead and bevel those over so they look a little bit more like wire instead of goofy looking straws. So that's looking pretty good. Make that the 24. Go ahead and scale that down. What we're going to do is just bring it up to right about the size we need it to be, not too crazy. And we'll go ahead and scale it along its original Y and scale it in on the X just a little bit. We'll bring it over and meet it up with this here. What we're going to do is take this edge, join it. We'll do the same with this edge and we'll join that as well. We'll go ahead and do the same for the two neighboring ones because we want everybody to be happy and the same here. Join those together and take this loop and just scale it in. So now that looks pretty good. We'll go ahead and take our cable here, bring it up just a little bit and fill that in. And we're going to duplicate this. Rotate that over and do pretty much the same thing we did on the other side. So that looks pretty good like that. Go ahead and scale this in on its original X just a little bit more to make it fit better. Which in this case it does not fit too terribly well. We'll go ahead and rotate that on its original X-axis. Take this here. And just move it out. And fill that in as well. Go ahead and shade smooth our cable here. Just leave it at shade smooth. We'll join these two parts together and we will C-sharp and bevel them. So now we're looking pretty good like that. We got our wire there. So the next step is we're going to go ahead and get these screws added in, which will be pretty easy. We're going to go ahead and grab this face, snap selection, or cursor to selection rather. Go ahead and out of edit mode and get our cylinder. We'll leave it at 24. Apply the scale. Bevel that over. Add a cube. Bring it out. Difference that. That's looking pretty good. We'll go ahead and send it like that. Actually, instead we'll go ahead and pull that out just a little bit. Give some room for our bevel to work here. And we're just going to put a nice quiet little bevel on there. Something simple. We'll go ahead and give it a random rotation as well to kind of match the picture up a little bit. We'll duplicate that over, rotate that, and now we got our screws in. So the next step would be is add our little hand crank screw there, and a little screw right there, and then our pieces here, and we are almost done. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and add a cylinder. Go ahead and leave it as it is. It's a 24. We're going to move it out of the way. Snap our selection, or snap cursor to selected. Go ahead and bring that down. Apply scale, bevel that over just a little bit. We don't want to go too crazy with it. Get a cube here. Bring it up. We're going to make that star screw there, and we'll go ahead and reuse that star screw in places here too. But I just realized that it's not a domed over head, so we'll go ahead and just get a regular cylinder, scale it down, apply our scale here. Take our cube, go ahead and take our cube here and just delete it, because we're not going to be doing a flathead or a Phillips style screw. We're going to just go with that diamond there. So we're going to go ahead and add in a cylinder. Add in a cylinder. Bring that to 12. Go ahead and scale it down to about right here. And we're going to select every other line, or every other edge rather. And we're going to scale everything down on, we're going to scale it down and except for on the Z-axis to where it gives us this nice little star. That looks pretty good. We'll go ahead and difference that. Go ahead and difference that. Sharpen it, put a little bevel on it, just so it looks pretty good here. And we're going to go ahead and scale this down, rotate it on the Y, get it right to about where we need it. Very cool. We're going to go ahead and push this over into where it needs to be. And we're going to duplicate it, rotate it on the Z -90. Go ahead and take this screw, put it here, duplicate it along the X here. We're going to go ahead and duplicate these, bring them up, move them over to about where they need to be since they are on an angle. We'll go ahead and grab all of these, push them in on the Y. Take these two top ones, since they are on a angled bit, we'll go ahead and rotate them, push them in on the Y, and just down ever so slightly on the Z. So that looks pretty good. Now what we need to do is we need to add our little hand knob here so we can crank it down onto our rail system. We'll go ahead and duplicate this, bring it over, go ahead and get rid of our reference. We don't need it anymore. We're going to go ahead and scale it up on the X, scale it down, rotate it 180 degrees, give it some random rotation, just so we can have it about where we want it to be, which is right there. Go ahead and make it a little bit bigger. We're going to take this whole edge loop here, scale it on everything but the X-axis, just so it gets inside of this hole. And we're going to go ahead and push it through. And now we're in business. So now we have a really decent looking sight. We're almost done. We're going to go ahead and snap the cursor to the world origin here. Add in a cube. Make it a little bit longer here. We're going to go ahead and difference that, push it down, go ahead and C-sharpen this. I'm going to bring this edge, move it forward just a little bit, take this face, inset it, extrude it upwards, take this, push it down, that one down just a little bit more, bevel it over with just a single chamfer. That looks pretty good to me. Next step, what we need to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and push that down more, is we're going to add our screen in, or the glass. So we're going to add a cube, scale it on the X, bring it up, scale it on the Z, just so it's inside our little frame here. I'm going to take the outside edges here, apply the scale, bevel those over, just so they're kind of out of our way. That looks good. We'll go ahead and scale it in to about like that. That's looking pretty good. Go ahead and duplicate that, difference it, and now we have this here. We'll go ahead and scale it in on the Y just a little bit more. And we have our Eotech style sight. And this is what we're dealing with. So it looks pretty good. It'll work on weapons, make your project look a little bit better, especially once you add decals to it. I'll go ahead and just select everything. We're going to hit Q, go to Mesh Tools, and we're just going to add blank material. So if we hold Control, it'll add a unique material per object. We'll go ahead and do that. Go into our rendered view here, or our look dev, and that's not too bad. So we're going to go to our materials here, kind of turn off the metallic and just bring that down, turn up the roughness a bit, it doesn't need to be that shiny. And we'll take this one and turn off the metallic for it as well. Go ahead and make it black and turn the roughness up a little bit more. This looks good, so we'll go ahead and take these two, join them together, and get rid of that material, and we'll go ahead and make these darker as well. Same goes for our screws here. Go ahead and join those all together. Get rid of all but one material and make it a bit darker as well. And just so we can kind of see what we're doing a little bit better, I'm going to go ahead and make these like a nice tannish color. I'll just go ahead and go with it like that. Make this a little bit darker tan color. And that's looking pretty good to me. So we go ahead and take our buttons here, join them together, because we don't need them to be multiple different colors, and we'll just do a new material, make it like a dark color. And we'll take this, go to Q, Mesh Menu, or Mesh Tools, Material List, and we'll go ahead and hover over blank material, and if we hold Shift, it'll give it a glass material. So we'll go ahead and do that. Now we can see through it here. I'm going to go ahead and hit Alt V, go into EV-HQ. That's looking pretty good. So now we got a good little weapon sight going on here. That looks pretty good to me. Now what you would do, you would apply all your modifiers, or do what you're going to do with as far as bevel goes, and you could substance paint this, or you can go ahead and add decals to this. I don't have any Eotech decals, so we're going to have to skip that part there, but this is what we're left with. So I'll go ahead and add a camera. We'll get rid of the screen, and we'll go ahead and press play. Take a look at what we got going on here. So I'm going to take my Hops Cam empty, move that down just so we can kind of get a better view of what's going on here. And that looks pretty good. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, please leave a like, maybe a comment if you have any comments, questions, concerns, or emotional outbursts. Definitely look forward to making some more videos in the future. Be ready for that course I'm going to be dropping here in the very near future. Until then, hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time.